Hello everyone, welcome to the day two of Microsoft certification series with our expert speaker Shayan Fernandez. So he is here now. I guess we have already got a bit late to start the session, so I'm just adding Shayan to the screen so that he can just start the session. Till then, you can explore about the. Okay, yeah, Shayan is here. Okay, so hey Shayan, over to you. Shayan, am I audible to you? Shayan, am I audible to you?
Yes, Lakshay, you're audible now.
Yeah, yeah, perfect, perfect. So the stage is all yours, so you can start now.
Okay, thank you, Lakshay. So, hello everyone. Good evening again. Welcome to the day two of this AZ 900 Bootcamp. Let me just go ahead and share my screen. Right, is my screen visible? Lakshit, can you just give me a heads up?
Yeah, it's visible. Perfect.
Perfect. Okay, guys. So again, welcome to the day two of this bootcamp. So my name is Shayan Fernandez, a Gold Microsoft Learn Student Ambassador. I worked in a startup as well. I was a co-founder there, and I've interned at organizations like KPMG and Microsoft. I'm an hackathon enthusiast. I've participated in a couple of national and international level hackathons, and I've bagged some accolades there as well. And I've worked in I'm an MTA certified in Python, and I love to document my works. I am a blogger, and I've also spoken in a couple of uh, global platforms last year and delivered talk across many of the domains of interest. And speaking about which, my domains of interest is artificial intelligence, blockchain, Devops, web dev, extended reality, cloud computing, IoT, and robotics, and as well as the Power Platform. I've given out a couple of new connectors to Microsoft Power Platform in the recent times as well. And if you would like to connect with me, you can definitely go ahead and follow me on LinkedIn. You can connect with me there. We can even talk. And then that's my GitHub repository. If you want to check out my work, whatever I'm working on, and all those things, you can definitely follow me on GitHub as well. And if you want to read a couple of my blogs that I've written, definitely follow me on dev.to/and1999. So with that, now let's see what is that we have planned for today. So the agenda would be what are the available IoT options on Azure, when to use Azure AI services, why use Azure DevOps and serverless, where to find out about app health, and how can Azure protect your workload. So in just continuation, just to brief you whatever happened yesterday. So we just got familiar with what is cloud, how does cloud work, and along with that uh, we had a brief discussion about how to create a resource, what is a resource group, and a lot of other things. So you can definitely check out that day one thing as well, because without that maybe it will be a little harder for you to follow it up with today's particular boot camp. But I'll try my level best for even a new joiner today to understand what exactly is going on. So just to briefly summarize what we did today. So cloud is basically something where you can deliver computing resources over internet, and then we had a just sneak peek into the history of how computing evolved and how is it going on today. And apart from that, we had discussed about a little more on what Microsoft Azure is, what is the benefit of a cloud, how can Azure help you, what are the different types of clouds that are available, public, private, hybrid. And apart from this, we had also discussed about the various types of infrastructures, like infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, software as a service, right? So we had a brief discussion around that. So what do they all mean? And finally, we spoke a little bit about regions. What do regions mean? How the disaster recovery thing in Microsoft Azure. So we just spoke about the region pairs, so on and so forth. So that is a brief thing of what we did yesterday. And in the practical part, we had a brief insight into how to provision a resource, how to see how what is the pricing of a resource, or what are the um, different types of the pricing standards that are available, or what you can call it as tiers. So what are the tiers available, and how to do all those things. And finally, we just in case if you didn't follow that webinar, then I just give you a couple of links. Go to Microsoft Learn and start learning with that. And then I also spoke a little bit about how I have utilized Azure in my student journey or as an individual while participating in hackathons. So how has Azure saved my day? So I just showed a couple of architectures around that. And so that is all we had discussed in yesterday's webinar. So moving ahead, so now that's where we start with today. So how exactly are the other things? Let's just look into each and every resource what is available to us on Azure here, right? So firstly, I'll be talking about Internet of Things. So that is the number one agenda. So I'm pretty sure many of you might be aware of what Internet of Things is. So basically, letting your device talk to through the internet to another device. Maybe you can call this as a Internet of Things. This is how it works. So, for example, in this diagram here, let me just check whether my screen is frozen. Right, perfect. It's not. So you can see here that in this particular diagram, there is a cloud in between, and then there are a couple of other things surrounding. For example, there's a car, there's a watch, there's a smartphone, there's a trolley, there's a PC, there's an airplane, and so on and so forth. So basically, let's say you have a fridge at home and you want to monitor it from a different place. Let's say you have been out of station and you want to monitor your fridge, right? So what you can do, you can simply have a sensor mounted on that and a small microcontroller or a microprocessor which uh, transmits the data or sends the telemetry information to the cloud, and you can monitor your things to the cloud. So basically, cloud is something that you can use here as a like a central gateway. So speaking about which, that's where Microsoft Azure also has a couple of options around the IoT solution. So you can browse through them, and I'll be showing them to you in a while as well on the Azure portal itself. So in a nutshell, for now, just understand that yes, Azure has a various variety of services on IoT. IoT Hub being one of the major service that I have used. So if you look into this slide, so this is what the icon looks like more or less is here. But this particular IoT Hub is a very useful service when it comes to building your projects and many other things. For example, on the left hand side, you can see a small diagram that is called the architecture, right? So where you can see devices on premises networks, right? So this is where your robots, your smart cleaning bot, or whatever it is, basically a device is active, and through which you can ingest the data into the cloud using the IoT Hub, from where you can store the data into your databases, which can be a blob storage or any other endpoint, right? So you can push the data to a database, or if you want to create a dashboard, maybe you can use Power BI, right? For example, that is a great thing. Or if you are very much experienced in this, you can develop your own front end and then create a fancy looking dashboard over there, and then display the data on that dashboard. So this is where in between you need a person here would be your IoT Hub, who will help you to ingest the data and egress the data here into the cloud and out of the cloud, to be very precise, right? So that is one thing. And then there is another platform which is called as Azure IoT Central. So you can build your fully fledged IoT applications here. And to make your job even more simpler, there are a couple of sample apps which are available. For example, here on the screen you can see, let me just check whether my screen is, yeah, right. So on this slide you can see here connected logistics. This is a simple application. All you need to do is just click on this create app button, and you will be up and running in no time with your application. And so on for other things, not just for retail. You have something for energy, you have something for government, you have something for healthcare as well. Like all these are your sample applications. Let's say you're not happy with the sample application, you want to do everything from scratch. Definitely there's a feature called custom app, and you can build your own applications here. Mm, again, a very good thing to keep in mind here is that Microsoft Azure or any other thing is not just for coders, right? It's very good that if you're into coding and if you have a better knowledge of coding, because you can follow these things, you can grasp things in a faster rate. But it's not necessary that you should be into coding, because there are a couple of fancy resources on Azure which actually lets you create your own application without even writing a single line of code, which is what I had spoken yesterday about one of such application called the Azure Logic Apps, right? So I had developed my own API without even writing a single line of code. So that is how easy it is to use Microsoft Azure. So don't get like, oh, and oh, I don't know how to code, or I don't know how to do that, I don't know Python, I don't know C, I don't know C sharp, or beat a coder who might be well versed in Python, maybe not in other platforms. So no need to worry, you have a solution for everything on Azure here. So this, again, why I spoke about this was Microsoft comes up with a lot of low code platforms. For example, Power Platform uh, is something where you can achieve more with lower coding, right? So something like that is your Azure IoT Central. Here all you need to do is just join the dots and your application is up and running. So that is, again, one thing, Azure IoT Central. A second thing, now one might ask me, okay, Shreyan, you spoke a lot about the software side, but you just emphasize something about the microcontrollers or the microprocessors. So how do we have a solution from Microsoft around that? So your answer is yes. uh, there is a very simple solution of this. It was very recently developed, I guess 4 to 5 years ago. I've seen this for the first time in my life 4 to 5 years ago. So let me just check whether, yeah. So this tiny thing that you can see on your screen is something called as the Azure Sphere, right? It's a kit, microcontroller unit kit, which actually has a lot of inbuilt features. If I just talk about this particular MCU, it might take this whole session's time, because there are a lot of things to keep in mind, not just on the front of connecting things, but also securing it. For example, let's say you use a simple uh, microcontroller. Let's say if you are familiar with IoT development, so maybe you might have heard about this thing called as uh, ESP32, or very popularly known as Node MCU, right? So this is a kind of like a hybrid Arduino, you can say, right? Not exactly Arduino, but exactly like a hybrid Arduino, just to understand, because Arduino comes up with a serial communication where it has Wi-Fi chip on board and you can communicate with that. So even in these tiny chips, there is a huge concern of security, because anyone can log in and then, you know, take control of your device without even you knowing it. So all these questions that we had, all these problems were somewhere resolved by the introduction of Azure Sphere. So these kits are available as well. You can order one for yourself and just put in those jumper wires and start playing with that. But again, just to answer this solution, yes, Azure not just has it on the cloud, but you can have a ready-made microcontroller unit with you working in your hand. So you can start from there, and you have some uh, easy ways to connect this to cloud through Visual Studio. I mean, you can work on Visual Studio, and from there you can connect to cloud, and then you can start working. So this is something that Microsoft offers you, and this thing was actually developed in association with AWS. That's why I've written in the beginning SEED, Azure Sphere. So an MT3620 model number and so on. So if you want to know more, just Google this thing out and you'll get it in this web, in your web browsers. If you want to study more on that. So with that, let's move on to the next topic, which is something that I guess every web developer must be knowing, but still, if you are newbie, so this AZ 900 bootcamp, especially for those people who are starting their journey or embarking their journey on cloud or something like that. So, right. So let's not assume that we know everything. So I'll just explain all those basic terms that you're supposed to know, because if someone comes up and tells you, hey, what is a web API? So you shouldn't be blank, right? What is API exactly? So API, by the way, stands for Application Programming Interface. So I'll just explain this with a very simple analogy here. So let's say you go to a restaurant, right? So you barge into the kitchen directly, what you do, you go to the restaurant, you sit in a, let's say, a table, and then you call your waiter, and then you'll order whatever you want, and your waiter goes all the way to the kitchen, gives the order right to the chef or whoever is cooking there, and the chef prepares the food for you, and then the food is again given to the waiter, and waiter gets it back to you. So in this whole scenario, let's assume that the web dev is taking place, or something, a development scenario. So basically, your application doesn't is supposed to, let's say, interact with the database, right? So what happens here is you cannot directly interact with the database. So you need that waiter in between. So your database is the kitchen, and your table is your front end gateway, let's say. So there is a waiter who's required here just to post the data into the database and get the data from the database. So this is where your API works. So this is what your API does. So basically, this pipeline that you build upon. So this is something API is in very layman's term. So there are a lot more things here. There are different types of APIs that you can form. So I won't go much into the depth of that, but just to make you understand what API is and how it works. So now with that, let's see what is Web API, which is accessible from the servers, and it accepts requests by HTTP. As you know, HTTP is a protocol that we use. So Web API, majorly work on the HTTP requests, right? So that is what your Web API does. So these work on the protocol of this HTTP. Then next thing is Web API endpoint. What is an endpoint? So basically where it hits at the end, right? So the location of your codes library. For example, kitchen in this case is your Web API endpoint. And then what is REST API, right? You might have heard about this a lot of times. So this is more or like a design of the URL styles that is used to expose the API's functionality. So you can say put, you can say get. So everything is a different. Everything has a different function. Let's say you choose put. So basically, it goes and put or post, whatever you call it, right? So let's say post basically takes your data from your front end and then gives it to the back end. But whereas the get thing actually gets your data from the server back to your front end. So these are the two methods, but there are a lot of other methods. You can explore a lot of other methods about REST API, how they work. There is a delete method, there's a put method, there's a post method, there's a get method, so on and so forth. So you can just go ahead and get familiar more. But I just, my duty here was to just to introduce these terms to you, right? So I hope you all are clear with these terms. Now, let's see who will guess what is this picture standing for. So with that, I completed the first part, that is the IoT section. So what does the IoT thing stand for, and many more things. So that was just for you to understand the theoretical side, but I'll also show you the practical side on Azure. I'll just tell you what are the available options and what are the things in the marketplace as well, right? So that was all for IoT for now. So now let's move to the next service, next very major service that is being shown, right? So I guess you must be familiar with this diagram, whatever I'm planning to show here. Yes, if you have guessed it, great. If you have not, that's okay. This basically picture stands for the artificial intelligence. Yes. So Azure provides you a lot of things with AI, especially in the field of AI. If you want data science, virtual machines, that is also there. If you use Jupyter notebooks, that is also there. Let's say you are a complete newbie and you don't know even a single line of code, but you are interested, you know the theoretical side, you know how a machine learning model works and how other things work, and let's say you want to explore by building a new model. So is there a way? Yes, there is a way. And it is something, you call it as machine learning studio. There are a couple of you can find it on internet, but unfortunately this particular studio is getting retired very soon, and Microsoft is retiring that. And but no worries, there is another thing on Microsoft Azure itself. It's called Azure ML service. So where you can go ahead and again have that same drag and drop interface. So basically, if you have ever worked with a machine learning algorithm, or let's say you have planned to use regression, for example, that's an algorithm that you have, right? So I won't explain what is regression, how it works, because that will be out of the scope of this particular webinar. But let's say you are using regression. For now, assume regression is a algorithm. So what happens if you're supposed to use this particular regression algorithm? You have to write first, import that particular algorithm from a library, and then form those things, and then fit that algorithm, and then finally you get the R2 scores, or basically the outcome, or what do you call the results, right? So now let's say you don't want to use that particular algorithm, or you don't want to code anything. So there is a way to do that, and it is very simple. You have a module, like a small uh, blue colored box, let's say a simple box, right? Whatever is coded, you have no idea what is coded in that, but of course this box has a couple of things in it. For example, you want to give what is your x, what is your y variable, so you can give all those things, and finally have your own an algorithm that is already set up here. So without even knowing it, you might not have followed whatever I'm saying, but yes, it's a simple drag and drop interface uh, that is offered by Microsoft. So now let's see what are the other things. So in this slide, you can see there are three things: pre-built AI, conversational AI, and custom AI. So in pre-built AI, let's say you have Azure Cognitive Services. I'll be showing this to you in a while. And conversational AI is where you have Azure Bot Service. There are there is a specific thing for healthcare as well, which is called Azure Health Bot. Again, works on the basic principle of conversational AI. And then there is custom AI, where you can have your machine learning model. So as I told you, if you are not a very good Python coder or R coder and still you want to do machine learning, so you can do it using the low code platforms that is offered on Azure Machine Learning, that the boxes that I was talking about. And let's say when it comes to artificial intelligence, right? So what is basically intelligence? So you might say, hey, scoring more in an exam is what you can term as intelligence, or something like that. But no, intelligence is basically when a person is able to talk and understand and then see and then visualize and all those things. So basically vision, speech, language, knowledge, and all these things actually comprise your intelligence. So how do we enable machines to do that in an artificial way, right? So by coding or by talking to the machines, that is what is artificial intelligence stands for. So in this regard, Microsoft gives you uh, a whole set of things which is called as Azure Cognitive Services. I'll be showing that to you in a while as well. But it comprises of vision, speech, language, knowledge, and search. So in vision, there is computer vision, face, emotion, content moderator, video, and video indexer. In speech, you have text analytics, spell check, web language model, NLP. Very precisely, I have worked with Lewis, Language Understanding Intelligent Services. So Lewis is also service under speech itself, and then you have translator as well. Then it comes under, when you go to language, you have speaker recognition, speech to text, text to speech, and all these things. So in knowledge, you have web search, image search, video search, news search, and auto suggest. And in your search thing, you have academic knowledge, entity linking service, Q&A maker, and then knowledge exploration. So all these services are given to you by Microsoft. Of course, again, talking here, all these actually majorly comprise of low code platforms. So there is no need to code again. And all these are delivered to you over the cloud, which we're talking about today, that is Microsoft Azure. So this is all that thing which is comprised under AI. Now, let's move on to the next topic, that is your serverless. So you might have heard about this term a lot these days. So if I tell you that okay, Azure gives you serverless compute, so what will you think? Uh, okay, yesterday I spoke about servers, right? So servers are stacked up in data centers, and you need servers to run anything. So now I'm telling you that yes, there is a serverless thing. So now you might say, hey, Shane, you're telling both the things, right? So on one side, you're telling there are servers in the data centers, and that is where we are getting our things from. But on the other side, you're telling, okay, Azure provides you serverless compute. How is that possible? Isn't it contradicting? Yes, it is a little bit of a catch here. There's a small catch. This term is actually a little misleading here. But yes, serverless computing is basically you don't bother about the servers in the backend. So you just worry about your application here. You just do things with your application, and you don't worry about your backend things. So of course servers are there, but you don't worry about those servers. You just worry about what you want. So serverless computing is a term that is used to describe an execution environment that's set up and managed for you. You just are bothered with your execution, or let's say your dev environment, and not what is going on in the backend. And if you ask me what solutions does Azure give you in this regard, so yes, there are services here. I'll be showing them to you in the next slide. So for now, let's understand how things work in serverless, right? So you merely specify what you want to happen. So for example, let's say you decide to write a post request, for example. So what do? You just go ahead and just write what you want to be done in the post request. You don't see, okay, which server is this going through, what is happening in in the backend, and all those things are something that you don't look into, right? And there is no infrastructure configuration or maintenance that is supposed to be handled by you. Or even in one way, I can say you're not even allowed to enter that data center, so you can't, you don't even know which particular server, which in which particular stack has your code being hosted in. So all those things are something that is black box to you, but all you are supposed to bother here is that how do I host my code, right? And now there might be a question. History, you just told us that okay, this is how serverless is, and you don't even have access. So how can I be rest assured that my code is secure? Yes, your code. I just read this a couple of days back. So I was just worrying that I'm giving all my data to let's say Microsoft here in this case. So how do I believe that it is being safe? It is being securely stored in their data center. So I just saw this thing that when you kind of given your data, right? So that gets encrypted and then enters the cloud, and this encryption key lies only with the resource owner. So basically that is you. So if you have created something here, so no one else has the right to see it. So even Microsoft in that case cannot access your data whatsoever, right? Even if they have their own server, they can't do it. So it can be only decrypted by you using your encryption, the key that you have. So this is how secured the cloud is. And yeah, so that is how even your serverless things are secure with Microsoft. Now, as I was discussing about serverless things, so what are the various offerings here that is offered to you by Microsoft? So, firstly, it is called as the Functions app. I'll show this to you in a while again. Then that is your first icon here. This is a serverless Functions app. Then the next thing here in between is your Logic app. So this is again another low code thing offered to you by Microsoft on Azure. This is your event grid. So this is another serverless offering to you on Microsoft Azure. So these three are the major players in the serverless field on Azure. So I have tried all these three, but what I personally feel here for a beginner, maybe Logic app is somewhere you can start from, because Functions app has a little bit of coding involved in case if you want to create an API or something like that. But Logic app has both the things, right? If you want, you can have a coding view, or if you don't want, you can have a drag and drop view. So these are the three offerings from Microsoft on serverless. Now, another major area here, which is currently trending in the tech field today, is DevOps. I am pretty sure many of you might have heard about this particular field, which is called a DevOps. So, developers and operations. So, basically, a combined thing of these two is what DevOps is. So, how does it happen? So, if you are from a software engineering background or something like that, you might be knowing the software development life cycle. So in short, if you're not, so don't worry. Software development life cycle, in short, in layman's terms, very simple. It is basically how your software progresses when it's getting developed. So what are the different phases? So it's not just that okay, you coded something, you pushed it, and you're done. No, you need to give regular updates. And let's say you use Azure, for example. So even Azure has a regular updates in place, or Windows gives you patches, right? So Windows 11, if you are using, you get updates every now and then from Microsoft. So it's not just okay, we have done this thing, so let's just push this OS and we'll not give any update. So it takes tremendous effort in the backend side to even push these updates and to test them. It's not that okay, I just coded something, it should work. It's not necessarily that it will work. Or many a times what happens, let's say you change your system, it worked in my PC, but if I give it to another development environment, it failed there. So These are all the things, these are all the hurdles that are coming up in a software development. So it is to overcome all these things. There were different types of, like models which were developed to monitor. So first, the earlier thing that I can think of was the waterfall model. If you want to learn more about this, just go to Google and type waterfall model SDLC. You can read more about that. Then there came many other models, and finally, currently in the industry, the latest trend is the DevOps. So this is again not a technology, but it's a practice that is followed. So what is now? I told you, okay, this is a practice that is followed. What are the different phases that are involved in this practice? So one is the really, let's say, initially you build it, right? So let's go from build. You code. Firstly, you plan, right? So firstly, plan it. For example, Windows. So Windows, they planned, okay, we'll just give out a new update of Windows 11, and what should be there in this Windows 11. For example, we'll change the UI, or we'll change a couple of applications, or we'll add a couple of applications. So there's a plan. Then once that is done, the next phase is coding. So this is where the developers come together and then they start coding. So once the code is done, it is supposed to be combined and all those functionalities should work together. So that is where you build it. So the whole code is compiled whatsoever and it is built into a software. Then this software is going out for the next phase, which is called as testing. So in this testing phase, the it is tested in various conditions. From there, it goes to the release where it comes out as a beta version or something like that, and then it goes to deployment, and then it operates. And then again, you cannot be like, okay, I release the software, now I won't even bother if there are any bugs. I give out the next update. No, once it is done, you have to check how is it working. So that is where the monitor comes up, and you collect everything, collect the data. Again, let's say plan. For example, gamers had a big issue when the Windows 11 had come up, but Microsoft took all those things into consideration and they gave out a much stable Windows later on. So this is how this infinity circle goes on. So it goes on till a particular extent. So that is why it is shown to in an infinite state, because this is a continuous process. It's not just like, okay, I did it today, I'm stopping it. No, this is like a continuous process that goes on, and this is what DevOps in a nutshell is. Now I spoke so much about DevOps, right? So there are options available on Microsoft Azure for you to have your DevOps. So Azure DevOps Kit is there, and almost other things are there. I'll not show them to you here, but I'll show them on the portal itself live. So again, just a little bit about monitoring. So what is monitoring? What do you mean by this term called monitoring? So modern software systems running in the cloud are very, very complex, right? So there are a lot of uh, backend services that are running. It's not just what you see. There are a lot of other services running. So these actually increase the complexity of a software, and you cannot actually, okay, one side monitoring is your front end, like the application, but the back end also has a couple of things. Let's say you have hosted your own website which has a database, right? You cannot be sure that, okay, your database is always working, right? You have to monitor your database, you have to monitor your web app, you have to monitor your API. Let's say you are using a logic apps, you have to monitor your logic apps, you have to monitor each and everything. So this is a challenge in itself. But there are couple of options on Microsoft even for this, right? So in Microsoft Azure, the cloud, there are a couple of options. For example, Azure Advisor, Azure Monitor, Azure Service Health. So these are the options that are available for you just to monitor your resources, right? So it's not like I created and I left it. I'll just trust whatever happens. There's auto scalability, there is that, there's this. No, there can be outage as well. So just to make sure that you can monitor all these things, what is the health of your resource? So there are a couple of monitoring services, for example, Advisor, Monitor, and Service Health. So you can see what are the kinds of different benefits that you get. Let's say you had your own server, so you had to monitor your server, you had to monitor the database stored in that, so you had to do everything. But here you get an option to monitor everything on the cloud itself, which is a great problem solver for people who are planning to build, or for organizations which are planning to build huge applications, right? So let's see how Azure Monitor looks like. So on the my left hand side of application infrastructure, custom services, Azure platform, all those things. They collect the data, the metrics are fed into this thing, and the logs are generated. And finally, you can see them on your right hand side. There are various things to look into. For example, insights. If you want to have an insight of that applications, containers, VM network, so you have all this under insights. And then to visualize your thing, you have dashboards, workbooks, and as I told, Power BI, and then analyze, respond, and integrate. So all these things actually, the in between guy, right? So the in between metrics and logs. So this is somewhere your Azure Monitor is. So once you collect your data, it can be uh, used in many other cases, or you can have, in simple terms, you can monitor all this data. That's what I was looking here. And finally, let's talk about something called as defense in depth, right? So what is this? So a defense in depth strategy basically uses a series of mechanisms to slow the advance of an attack that aims at acquiring unauthorized access to the data. So I'll be talking more on this in tomorrow's thing, because that is where we'll be looking into the crude fundamentals of how data is and what security means and all those things. But today, just to give you an overview, because I'll be using this diagram even in tomorrow's webinar as well. So I'll be talking about all these things. So of course, the first here, your data lies in the bottommost layer, right? It's not like, okay, I've just inserted, so data is storing there. No, there are a lot of other things that are here. For example, your physical security, let's say your server, right? That is a physical security. Then you need to actually have your identity and access. So if I give a wrong credential, it won't let me log in. And let's say somehow the hacker surpasses this thing as well. Then there is a perimeter, then there's a network, then there's a compute, then there's another application, and right within that lies your data. As I told, your data is again encrypted. So if you see, this is how much the security you get in, and this is what you mean. Okay, this whole thing, this whole diagram that I'm showing you, the various layers, why are these various layers present? Just to make sure that this attack doesn't be so easy, right? If anyone is planning to attack your server, right? If anyone is trying to uh, hack your data or something like that, or have a data breach, so it is not very easy even for the hacker to do all these things, because this is the defense in depth mechanism that is present. So physical security, identity access, perimeter, network, compute, application, and finally data. So you have to go through all these layers to reach the data. It is not directly the data. So it is a kind of a safety measure provided to you on cloud to avoid any kind of malicious activity or an unauthorized access. So this is what defense in depth means. So we'll continue with what defense in depth and what the other technologies. We'll talk about each and every layer. For example, physical security, what is identity and access, what is perimeter. We'll have a detailed look into all these things in the upcoming webinar, that is on day 3. But in general, for you today to know, just get familiar with what is defense in depth, or DID. For example, I'll be using this term in tomorrow's webinar as well. So with this, I will stop the theoretical part. Now it is time for us to see all those things that I had shown you in all these theoretical slides. How do they look like? How do they look on Microsoft Azure? So I'll be showing that to you now. I'll just change my window. So just give me a heads up if you guys understood all these things that I just showed you right now. So let me just switch my screen. Okay, this is something I missed in yesterday's thing, and even I wasn't sure. So I spoke about regions, right? So if you want to have a better understanding of how it looks, you can come here. I'll just share this link in the PPT as well. And so you can see how are they utilizing things here, and how is it how has Microsoft partnered with NAR to develop many other things, right? So I'll just show that. And okay, yeah, so you can have give me a second. Okay, not really sure of why is this happening, but anyways, so let's continue. So I was showing you around the Azure AI Labs, right? So let me just share my screen. Okay, I guess you can see this, right? So now you can see I have created a resource already. This is how it looks like, and just click on sign in here. So to create this resource, all you need to do again go to create a resource and then have your Azure custom portal, like custom vision resource setup. Give it a name. I've given micro hack prediction. You can do any other thing, that any name that you want, any relevant name, because you should be able to identify what exactly is this. And you can have this APIs key here. You can link it. So this keys and endpoints is where you get your API keys, right? So this is loading here. It is loading my account. It will take a while. So this is how my custom vision portal looks like. So I can just click on here to create a new project, or if I have an existing project, I can go ahead and use them. So I'll just click on a new project here.
Excuse me, sir. If you are trying to say
So
anything,
here I've
I hope
created
the
one for
audience.
brand detection. Let's see how is that happening. So I haven't coded anything again. If you see, I have used zero coding so far. I haven't even opened Visual Studio in front of you guys. So this is how easy it is. And here you can see a button to train, and here you can see a button to quick test it. So I've given a couple of brand names here, Zara and then Starbucks, and then I guess maybe the third one was KFC, right? So of course, so these three brand names. So let's see how can, so I've given 16 images for KFC, I've given 15 images for Starbucks, and I've given 20 images for Zara. So right, so I've tagged all of them. So I've done all those things, and I can just go to predictions. So because I've already run this thing, so let's see how has it predicted here, and let's just have a quick test in front of you. So I need a KFC image. So all I can do is okay, I've given something here. So go. Let's see which image is this. So it's a Zara image. Okay, and yeah. So here you can see that model has given me out a prediction that it is 43.9% sure that it is Zara. So this is an iteration one. So the more and more images you give, because you can see I've just given how many? Very few images, right? So you have to actually give thousands of images to train a model. So all you have to do is download and upload here, and you can have your own own model up and running in order to identify me. This is a simple demonstration that I was showing you just to identify the brands. Imagine what all things can be done with this, right? So this is how easy it is. So without coding, nothing, you can choose iterations, you can search for tags, you can sort it out. Everything is given to you. Or if you want more settings, you can have it here. So change the pricing tier and then the domains if you want. Some are already given to you, of course. So you can set the maximum limit, what kind of classification type you want, multi-labor or multi-class, all these things. So this is how easy it is on Microsoft Azure. This is how easy AI is on Microsoft Azure. So I would definitely recommend you guys to check all this out in your uh, upcoming, like before giving out the examination or whatsoever. So just enjoy all these things. So finally, I would like to end this on this note that okay, go ahead and learn new things, get familiar with whatever I've spoken today, the defense in depth, the different types of services. There's a whole catalog that you can find on Microsoft Learn. Another best part here is that once you complete the whole learning module, you get awarded, you get tiny trophies, you can showcase on LinkedIn saying that, oh, see there, I've done all these things, right? So all those things are available. Let's say you're not a guy who want to study, right? So there's an option for you. It's called Learn TV. So the Microsoft experts have done a small session around the whole thing, and they've recorded and uploaded. So you can revise your thing, like let's say before giving your AZ900 examination or something like that. So with this, I would like to conclude today's day two. That's all we had to cover in day two. So in day three, let's talk more about the uh, IT side or the admin side, how things happen in that. So with this, thank you everyone for attending the day two session, and uh, let's meet in tomorrow's session. Thank you, everyone.
I'm sorry. Thank you very much, Shreyan, for joining us today and giving a very insightful session on Azure and its services for the day two. I am pretty sure that our audience would be able to grab because we were able to see very good comments. And sorry everyone for the technical and the network glitches. We were facing network glitches from both of our ends. So we'll keep in mind the same, and let's join back tomorrow to complete this boot camp and make you AZ900 ready. So for that, let's wrap up this session. Thank you very much, Ren, for devoting your time to the community, folks. Hope to see you tomorrow once again.
Thank you, Varun. Looking forward.